Made the trip up from Springfield to be here with us, and he's going to turn around and go back, and I'm sure he's going to give a report about how many enthused patriots are here. So we're going to turn this microphone over to our Congressman. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. Hey, thank you all. You guys get the Polar Bear Award today, huh? Good job. Good job. Hey, I was giving a little bit of thought, and we had a little bit of a drive coming up here, and thought that you might try and imagine something with me. I figure it's cool enough that you'd be awake and aren't going to go to sleep, so just bear with me a minute. And I want you to picture yourself going back in a time machine back to about 1850. Now, in 1850, you were either a congressman or a senator, and you're in Washington, D.C., and there are all of these different things going on. By 1852 or so, there's this lady who publishes a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin, and the country is getting more and more polarized on the question of slavery. And yet somehow, you in Washington, D.C., the forces are kind of divided, and you try this little compromise or that little you try to figure out what state can join the Union, and then 1857, the brilliant minds on the Supreme Court come up with this Dred Scott decision, and aside from saying that black people are property, it also says that you can't do any more of these compromises that are going on. And so things go from bad to worse, and then Lincoln is elected and he's on the train, and all of a sudden you have the South seceding, and you feel like that you're on this train that's about to go off of a cliff, and there is a lack of leadership not just in the Senate and in the Congress, but in America, for being willing to stand up to what is an obvious problem and deal with it honestly. Right. And then comes the war. And that war is more terrible than anybody imagined. And even now, when we hear the numbers of 600,000 people dying, more people died in that war than all the wars that America's fought. You see that. I recall the letter that was read when they played the Shokin Farewell, you know, that pretty little haunting fiddle tune. And the letter of the man who was writing his wife, he had a premonition that the next day in the battle that he was probably going to die. He said, "Oh, dear Sarah," he said, if you get this letter and I don't come home when the wind blows and rustles the leaves and the flowers, do you know that it's my spirit?" The amount of pain and suffering because America did not have the leadership to deal straight up with a problem, and they knew it was a problem, and they didn't succeed, and so they took a terrible beating. Now, why do I talk about that? Because we have seen what's going on in our country, and we got a whale of a problem, and it's not going to do any good to whitewash it. It's time for all of us to recognize it, to take it straight on, and you know what? I believe the American public is ready to deal with what's in front of us. I believe Americans, they always rise to the challenge when somebody just simply tells them the straight truth, no sugarcoating, this is the way it is. Now, because you've survived this long, I know you're a rugged bunch, so I am going to try to give you just a couple of numbers to remember, because I'm on the budget committee and I see these numbers up close. Here's the first number, $2.2 trillion. What that means is that's how much revenue comes into the federal government. $2.2 trillion. The same number is if you add all the entitlements together plus the debt service. So those two numbers are even. So what's left over in our spending? All of defense, and in addition to all of defense, what you have is everything that you think of the government spending money on. Prisons, government buildings, you're talking about parks, you're talking about education, commerce, justice, whatever it is. If you zero all of that out, you have a balanced budget. Just entitlements equals revenues. You can't get rid of all of defense.
You might hear
it just isn't going to work. And that's the problem. And that's what these people are all upset because somebody promised them something and lied to them and didn't tell them the truth, that all of these benefits that you're expecting look, there's got to be some modicum of common sense. You know, the people up up north, you know, their pension is 3 times the pension of everybody in the private sector, and they expect that they got to have more and more and more. Look, the numbers, you got to deal with some mathematics here, and I believe that all of you and America is ready to deal with it. Now, you know what the deal is. The president just released a budget, and it's a joke. It's not a funny joke, it's a bad joke. It's because it refuses to acknowledge a problem. I don't want to repeat that horrible tragedy where before we refused to deal with what's going on. And the fact that you're here says that we're ready for the next round. Now, I'll give you a report from the front lines of the House. You guys took action in November and things started to happen. America's waking up. I want to tell you, the congressman that you put into the Congress, along with a bunch of us old geezers that are conservative, been around forever, you know what? We're about as happy as a bunch of tornadoes in a trailer park. We brought that whole budget up, and everybody said, well, what could we cut? By golly, did we cut? We cut Obamacare about 10 different ways. Anytime you saw EPA, you always saw some more cuts there. Talking about buildings that are going to be paid for the United Nations, whoop, that's gone. So I'll tell you, the first line of defense has been established. The beachhead is secure, and we have got a bunch of conservative congressmen down there, and they're in the mood to cut things. They're swinging the meat-ex. And in the next couple of years, we're going to have to take the next perimeter. And that is, we got to take the Senate, and then we're going to have to take the president. Now, this president, after his last decision that he's not going to defend the idea that marriage is between a man and a woman, he's basically abdicating his responsibility in an unconscionable and unconstitutional way. I mean, he's really giving us a lot of ammunition to say, this guy has got to go. So here's where we stand. It's about this simple. The solution is really easy. It's being passed out on the other side of this building. It's called the U.S. Constitution. It's not that complicated. Just read it. What in the world are we going to do when you're spending too much money? Well, let's start with deciding, what does the government have to do? Well, the Constitution, in the preamble, you don't have to get past the first page, provide for the national defense. So let's start by doing that and doing that right. And then after that, we have to decide, and there's all these other things that maybe it's nice, but the nice stuff is going to have to go. And the unconstitutional stuff is really going to have to go. So it's not that complicated. And you know what? You may feel like you're kind of small, and you don't feel like you can make a difference, but you know what Americans have always found? When Americans get their minds focused on something, and when they decide we're going to solve a problem, we know how to do it. Our forefathers have done it before us. They've showed us the way. And I would suggest to you even this, that as you go about making those tough decisions personally, to take this thing on and to be part of that great tradition, that there will be the spirits of those lining the sides of the roads as you pass, cheering you on and saying, you are worthy to be one of those great American patriots. And thank you for doing the job that's done. And so many people do it, just like the Civil War. People did what was right. Maybe they didn't get a lot of credit for it, but that's what's made this country exceptional. And we're still an exceptional country, and we can be in the future. I just want to thank you all so much for coming out today. I know it's cold, and I don't want to bore you and run on too long, but we did make a drive on up this way, and there's a whole lot of other great patriots down in Springfield. And I'll tell you, in Washington, D.C., don't you think it's a lonely place? There are a lot of really great, enthusiastic people. I get to work with some of them. You know some of their names. Some are a little bit better at being more outspoken, like Michelle Bachman, a friend of ours, and Steve King. But there are, let me tell you, there's dozens more that are a little quieter, but they are just solid patriots, and they're people you'd be proud of, and they're down there working hard for you, and they're ready for you to send the next boatload of reinforcements to the Senate. God bless you all. God bless America. Thank you.